welcome to everyone. My name is Andrew Shahan. Thank you for joining us at the Transforming Autism Project webinar series. Today's focus is supporting your child's emotional development. So I just want to start by giving you a little bit more information about myself, as well as Zuzana, who is another one of our TAP autism therapists. So I have been working with children with autism and families now since the 1980s, so it's been quite a few years. I've learned an enormous amount about supporting children with autism, about what makes interaction and communication so difficult for individuals on the spectrum, and I am very excited and honored to share everything I've learned over the years with all of you who are on the front lines as parents every day trying to support your children and certainly trying to support their emotional development. So we are going to do our very best to give you some very practical information, some strategies that will help you support your children, especially in learning to express their emotions, manage their emotions, etc. So that's me, Zuzana.
I wonder, hello.
There you are.
Hello.
There you are.
Hello, that's me. My name is Zuzana Camm. I'm a child psychotherapist, and working with kids with autism is my passion and something I'm interested in more than anything else, I would say. I've been working with children with autism for about 10 years. I haven't counted it, but it feels like 10 years. And I also am a sibling of a now adult man who has autism himself. So I've been witnessing how it is to be autistic, or how to be with an autistic person all my life. And I feel privileged to be able to cooperate with Transforming Autism and Andrew and our colleague Kendall, who couldn't come today because of her. She had an accident yesterday, and she's saying hello to everyone, and she will join us hopefully next time. So emotional development is something of my special interest. So I hope we'll have a wonderful hour together. Andrew, are we planning to talk for 20 minutes and then give space to the participants to make it more interactive tonight?
Exactly, yes. So now that we've introduced ourselves, I want to talk a little bit just about how we're setting things up with the webinar. And first, I want to say that what we're going to do, as you said, Zuzana, is we're going to present some information and share some of our experience and knowledge with all of you. And we have a PowerPoint that we'd like to go through, and then we'd like to open things up for all of you to bring your questions and concerns and experiences and share those with us, and we will have a much more interactive conversation at that point. So for the first part, we would ask that all of you that are listening, just turn off your microphones so that we don't hear sometimes background noise and other things that can get really loud. I unfortunately, and this is why I'm wearing my headset today, there's major construction happening right across the street from where I live. So there's a lot of hammering noises and loud construction sounds. So hopefully this will help cut that out. If at any point I get drowned out from the construction, please, Zuzana, let me know and I will repeat what I've said. And I will be doing my best throughout to manage my own emotions as I am filtering out the intense background noise of the construction. So we all are working on our own emotional development as well as our children. So that's always important to remember. Anything else, Zuzana, administrative pieces that I've left out?
We just like to invite everyone to join in tonight more than we have been able to do in the past, perhaps. That was our idea, to make the hour more interactive, so we can connect with what's on your minds and on your heart, and develop discussion over what would you like to bring tonight.
Excellent. Yes, indeed. And a reminder too that you can, once it's time to ask questions, you can participate in many ways. You can certainly send us questions in the chat box. You can type them in. You can also just come on air and ask us questions. You can also be brave enough to come on fully with a camera, as Zuzana and I are, and so we get a chance to see you. But it's completely up to you. You bring yourself to this as in the most comfortable way possible. Okay. So let's get started, shall we? Okay, so supporting your child's emotional development. The first thing I want to start with, as someone who's worked with a range of children and adolescents over the years, is that emotional development, although it is incredibly critical for life, for relationships, for sort of every aspect of how we move through the world as people. Emotional development has not been focused on and I think addressed in the way that other aspects of development have, like communication and behavior, et cetera, et cetera. So I just want to acknowledge that we have a long way to go in the field to get to the point where I think we are being more effective in conveying this really important information to parents about how to support their child's emotional development. And I think we recognize that at TAP, that it's a critical area of development that sometimes doesn't get focused on as much. So I want to start by saying that. So thank you for coming and joining us. And we definitely recognize that this is a critical area of focus for all families that have children on the spectrum. Anything, Zuzana, that you'd like to say to start?
I just want to support your idea, and that children's emotional well-being and their capacities are like a gate to anything else we do with them therapeutically or as parents or relatives. So feeling okay inside allows the children to connect with anything else they do in their life. So that's why it's so important to talk about emotions and feelings and support children with them.
Absolutely. Yes. And another additional piece that I want to add is that most of us, and this is true for myself, and I think it's true for all of the professionals as well as the parents I've worked with over the years, most of us never had a class, for example, when we were young people, when we were in grammar school or high school, on emotional intelligence or emotional development or learning tools and skills to better recognize our own emotions and manage our own emotions effectively. So this also is difficult because most of us learned how to do this just in the context of our families and our everyday relationships. We didn't have sort of, most of us, formal training or coursework in this, which also makes it really difficult because many of us, as we go through life, are still learning to manage our emotions. I don't know a single person, whether it's in my family or my friends across the board, who's yet mastered the ability to manage one's emotions effectively. I don't know if that's even possible. So I really want to spotlight that as families, you have an incredibly challenging task that oftentimes none of us are prepared for. And so I think that's really important to recognize, to be really give yourselves a lot of support and gentleness and understanding that, of course, you have lots of questions and confusion about this area, because it's not anything that most of us have formally had training in. Okay. Psychologists, of course, have a little bit more, I would say, Zuzana.
More of what?
More training in emotional development than some other folks.
There is one thing, actually, I'm sure you'll talk about it. That's something that I come across all the time with children with autism, and is the sense of self. And it's something I haven't learned as a kid. I learned to follow and be compliant and listen to authorities and do what I was told, but I didn't learn to recognize my feelings and I yeah and I wasn't encouraged to express my feelings freely because I was encouraged to listen. So it's something, the sense of self, who am I, what am I feeling, and expressing is something that I'm learning alongside the children, like you said. And I agree with you, it's a lifelong journey, and it requires patience and self-compassion, loads of self-compassion, and we are in it together, and the children are our best teachers, like we always say.
Yes, that's such an important and critical point, Susanna, that not only do we not have sometimes formal training, but we also, many of us, grew up in families and also in cultures or in societies where emotional expression wasn't necessarily encouraged, right? So we have this double layer of not necessarily having good models of learning how to do it. And of course, my parents did the very best that they could to try to teach that to my sister and I, but they had their own struggles and they never had emotional expression or emotional development really modeled well for them in their own families for many reasons. So again, we're all learning these things sometimes at later stages in our lives, and then we have this incredible task of trying to support our children that haven't even have even more challenges to learning how to be able to manage and understand and express their emotions. So this is a big task, and I think that's the message that we really want to start with. Where you are right now is very okay and understandable, no matter how much of a struggle it is right now. There's some information and tools that we can give you that will really help you maybe be a bit clearer about where to start with your own child. So to start with some of what we have here on the PowerPoint, when we're talking about emotional development, we just want to be a little more specific and clear about it. The ability to recognize, express, and manage feelings or emotions at different stages of life. That's what we've been talking about, even still doing learning how to do as adults. And also to have empathy for other people, which means being able to recognize and understand that other people are having their own emotional experiences, and then being able to really think about or even feel what another person might be going through. Okay, so those are very, very deep and complex processes that, entire courses and books are written about. So we can't dig into all of the fine details in less than an hour here, but that's just what we're talking about as we start here today. And it's important to understand that children learn how to develop emotionally over time, most importantly by how we, as professionals and as parents, respond to and interact with them. Okay, that's one of the most important takeaways, that every child I work with is learning a lot about how to express and handle their own emotions by how I do that when I'm with them. Okay, and so what that means is that if I approach a session with a child, for example, and I've had a really difficult commute getting to their house, I was cut off by someone, I was late, and I'm very agitated or stressed or even angry or upset. If I come into a room with a child and I'm still feeling all of those emotions and I'm still in that state, oftentimes that comes through my facial expressions, my body language in a particular way that may actually impact that child being able to feel comfortable with me, to approach me, to get the sense from how I'm bringing myself to the situation that everything's okay and they can relax because I'm calm and relaxed. So this all is very important because, again, the way that I bring myself to my interactions with children absolutely demonstrate for them and teach them so much about emotions. And that's just really important to recognize. Now, that doesn't mean as parents that we're telling you, oh my goodness, you guys always have to be calm and well regulated and at peace and at ease when you're with your children. That's impossible. No one has the ability to do that. At the same time, the more you're able to do that when you're with your child and interacting with your child, the more your child is going to be then available to interact with you. Does that make sense? Zuzana, do you want to
Mhm. Yeah.
say anything? Yeah.
There was something we discussed in our preparation for tonight, and you mentioned you started talking about it. It's not only that we don't have to be perfect and calm and regulated all the time. That's not needed. And also, children need to be exposed to a range of emotions, and the children need to experience us being able to manage those emotions, being able to name them, and survive them. And we spoke about a metaphor of weather. We need all the different seasons, and we need different weather. The nature needs it. Everybody needs it. So this is normal and natural and needed. So we don't need to put the pressure on ourselves as to be perfect, calm, happy. It's not realistic and it's not needed. So what's needed is to recognize. That's what we want to teach our children: recognize, express, survive, manage, and repair. Maybe you said something nicer than repair, Andrew, last time. um, when the sun shines, we go out and we have a good time. So it's the same with feelings. Once we feel good, okay, settled, happy, we can enjoy those moments, because inevitably one day storm will come and it's okay.
Yeah, I really love the idea of weather, because all of us know some mornings we wake up and we feel good and we feel hopeful and excited and calm, and other mornings we wake up and we feel incredibly stressed and overwhelmed and upset. So our emotions can change enormously, and we don't always have control over what we're feeling in any given moment. We have a bit more control over how we respond and what we do with our thoughts, and again, how we bring ourselves into interactions with people every day. So what I wanna, I'm gonna turn to the next slide here, and I wanna say that when we're talking, this is so important to understand, because what we do know about emotional development for children is that absolutely, whether you're talking about a child that has autism or a typically developing child, emotional development goes through the same steps and stages. And that's really important to understand, because somehow, and I've been in this field for some years, and I've seen this over and over again, somehow, sometimes we assume that because a child has autism, they don't have the same, in many ways, emotional needs and emotional development path as a typically developing child. And it's really important to recognize that what we know about young children and how they learn how to manage their own emotions and share and express them, the same is true for children with autism. And that's really important to understand. We know that children with autism have brains that are wired a bit differently, which makes communication and social interaction and navigating the everyday social environment a bit more challenging and difficult. So we have to recognize that. But the ability to feel, express, manage one's emotions is going to develop in the same kind of way for someone with autism. That's really important to understand. So what that means is we have to be very clear about what we're doing when we're interacting with a child that can really support and facilitate their ability to both recognize and express and handle their own emotions. And so that's what we're going to focus on. Do you want to talk about the stages, Zuzana, here?
Mm-hmm. So there was one question I've noticed on the participants list, and it mentioned that the child. I don't have the questions in front of me because sorry, and I hear this quite often from parents, is that the parents are really trying very hard to teach children about feelings And professionals and parents often use cards with different feelings. But the parents then also say, but my child doesn't really want to use the cards, or they can describe the cards very well, but it's really hard to put that in practice or utilize the cards in the situations that are emotional, or they struggle to use them to help them calm down or describe their own feelings. And it's linked to what Andrew said about the stages. So using pictures is something that's quite high level of functioning. So we need to always think, where is my child in their emotional development at this moment, here and now? Yesterday the kid could communicate in abstract terms, but right now maybe the child so dysregulated, so upset because of something that they can't talk perhaps in this moment. So we need to always think, in this moment, what is their developmental functioning? And when we look at a typical child's development, the first thing they always learn is to manage their physiological and emotional state. So when they are cold, they'll cry, they want us to attend, recognize that they have some needs and help them, soothe them. So this is the first thing children learn. And when we talk about autistic children later in practical life, let's say 7-year-old child is very upset, we need to think, how is he doing with his physiological and emotional states right now? Can he calm down himself? Can he be in touch with me? So that's the first thing I'm thinking. How is his regulation? Is he in contact with me? Second thing children learn is be in touch with another, in emotional connection with another. And you can imagine this little kid who makes the first social smile, and who will exchange smiles and giggles with you, and who will mirror your facial expression. So it's a second level of emotional development. And I'm simplifying it really very much, but it's for the sake of time. So child learns to form emotional bond, and we can say fall in love with another. And all parents know that moment when they go to first, I'm here with you kind of moment. And it can be non-verbal, of course. The first thing, or first level of functioning in emotional development, is the child starts to develop sense of self and is able to initiate. So it's me, hey, I want more bubbles. Oh, do it again. And again, it can be non-verbal, but there is a sense of I am here and I want something. I've got an idea, and it can be all done non-verbally. The next thing that develops is not only I am here and I want something, but there is another person in the room. So I want the bubbles, but mommy doesn't want them. So that's the next level, to recognize myself and another. And it's very important for development of empathy. So I need to know there is another person and there is me in the room. The next level of abilities and skills and capacities is share creative ideas. And you can see it in children when they start to use toys or object to represent something from real life, and they can do pretend play. This is a sign of their ability to share creative ideas. And as the children grow and develop, they start to be able to think in abstract terms. And as they grow, we all grow, we also start to perhaps think in terms of ethics and spirituality, morality. So these are the higher levels of emotional thinking or development. So using pictures is quite complex, and we need to think, is my child ready, or is my child able in this moment to be aware of themselves, of another, and communicate? There's a lot of things to do in the moment. So I hope it's quite complex, and there are lots of things to think, and I know it's 7 or I don't know how many different levels of functioning, but I think the message is what is happening here and now, and how can I meet my child at the developmental stage where they are functioning at the moment. And not only my child, but also myself. Where am I right now? Can I think, or do I just need to breathe because I can't even think right now? I am overwhelmed myself at the moment. So I also need to think about me, because when it comes to emotions and regulating emotions with another, we have to take in account both of us. And if we want to help our children, or a child we are with, we have to develop self-awareness and ability to reflect, and have maybe some tools in our sleeve to help us in difficult moments, to help us regulate and be able to think creatively or logically in the moment.
Yes. Beautiful. Thank you, Susanna. That it's it's not so easy to capture all of these different stages, which would be, as I said, an entire textbook, or you know, 2-semester class in one slide. So thank you. And I want to go back to what you said, Susanna, because I think this is really what we want to focus on with everyone who's with us today, parents and families. We really want to start where your child is. And most of our, especially younger children on the spectrum, are really at these very early stages of development. So they're just learning at this point how to be able to manage their own sort of internal world, their internal engines, what they're feeling, what they're experiencing on a sensory level, what they're feeling emotionally. They're learning how to be able to be with that, and then understand and recognize it, and then eventually share it with other people. But most of the younger children that we're addressing here today are really going to be at these earlier stages. So we really want to think about, where is your child right now in terms of their ability to manage and express their own emotions with you and with everyone in the family right now. And visual.
I think that's supposed to be my picture of the weather that I didn't.
Ah, very good. Very good. So we
You know,
will, yeah, it's okay. We would have had a very beautiful picture of the weather, but um, this is where we want to start, by really thinking about, where is your child right now. We want to meet our children where they are, and not try to push them perhaps beyond a level that they're capable of attaining. And that's, I think, what back to Susanna's point about using visual cue cards to teach emotions. Many of our children can memorize labels of emotions on cards, but their ability in the moment when they're feeling a particular emotion to be able to label that emotion and share it with other people sometimes lags far behind. So sometimes we focus on flashcards because they're concrete and because it looks like our children can look at them and make sense of them. But oftentimes what I've seen over the years is that children that do that work, and even that can memorize emotional state cards really well, are still not able, in the moment they're experiencing an emotion, to make sense of that emotion, to label it and put words to it and share it with other people. And so that's what we really want to shift to, that rather than focusing on something like a visual card that teaches emotions, what's most important is that when you notice that your child is experiencing a certain emotional state, for example, if your child is smiling and clapping their hands together and jumping up and down, it's very important to give them words for what they are experiencing in that moment. Ah, you're excited. You're happy. What that helps your child do is begin to make that connection between what they're feeling on the inside and what the language is that describes that. Right? That's a very crucial first step or first phase. And even if your child is not yet using words or language. The experience that they have of you looking at them and being with them and acknowledging what they're feeling emotionally sends them a very important message, which is, I'm with you, I see what you're experiencing, it's okay, what's going on for you on the inside that's coming out is good, I love you, I accept you, and that's a very crucial first stage and first phase of emotional development. So that's where you as parents play such an important role. And that's what we know actually works and is critical for emotional development that starts for kids very young. So that's what we want to really try to help you think about doing, is how in everyday life and everyday interactions with your child, where are there opportunities for you to acknowledge, very simply, not with 4 or 5 complex sentences, but just to say to your child, ah, you really like your sandwich. Mmm, delicious. Your child is experiencing something. They're having their own thoughts, their own feelings, their own reactions to something, and all you're doing is naming that for them, which is a crucial first step in your child's emotional development.
And they feel felt. They feel felt and understood in that moment. And I would add something, if I may, Andrew. There is something, if you imagine feelings here, there's something that comes hand in hand, and it's sensations. And every feeling comes with a sensation. So what is very helpful, what I've learned from OTs, my dear colleagues, occupational therapists, is to not only as psychotherapists name the feeling, but also name the sensations. Because if you remember the first state I describe as managing physiological states, so we also want children to understand what happens to them at the physiological level. You are cold, you are shivering, you are hot, or this is prickly. So all the sensations are very helpful to name for them, because then they can link the sensations and emotions.
Yes, and we're spending a lot of time here on the second bullet point here, which is again how children learn to respond and manage their emotions based on how we respond to them. So I think parents are doing this intuitively, naturally all the time. So you notice that your child's eyes are starting to close, and you say, ah, you're tired, sweetie, you're sleepy. Come here, let me hold you. So, oops, excuse me.
That was really noisy. You didn't like that noise.
So as a way to manage my own emotional state as I'm trying to stay focused with all of you, is I'm going to take a breath and I'm going to tune out the external noise, keep myself as calm and focused as I possibly can. And I'm spotlighting this because this is actually something we're all doing all day long. And this is some of the hardest work for our children, is, for example, learning how to tune out a really loud sound, keep ourselves calm, and then stay involved in an interaction or a task. So this is a very complex process. And I just wanted to illustrate it there with a real moment example. So I think that what you said, Zuzana, is so important, that our children are learning about their internal worlds and their thoughts, their feelings, the sensations they're experiencing, their emotions, by how we respond to them, which is again by acknowledging what they're experiencing and what they may be feeling in every given moment. And so going back to intuitively, parents are doing this all the time. So that's part of what I want to encourage you to do. I think, unfortunately, parents have gotten a lot of information from well-intentioned professionals in some ways to stop trusting your own intuition and your own sort of internal compass about what's happening with your child. And I think Zuzana and I are really encouraging you to trust yourselves. In other words, when you see your child experiencing a particular emotional state and you read it in their facial expressions and in their body language, for example, your child is eating something and they make this this face of, oh, I don't like that. That tastes really awful to me. My body doesn't like that. If you give them words for that, if you say, ah, you don't like your broccoli. Ooh, yuck. It doesn't taste good. If you just meet your child there, you're actually immediately activating their emotional learning and their social learning as well. You're giving them the message, Daddy's with you, Mommy's with you. I see what you're experiencing, and I'm giving you words for it. So it's very, very, in many ways, it's a very important thing that as parents, you trust your ability to read your child's cues and signals. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways we want you to get from today is spend a lot more time focusing on that, on tuning into your child's facial expression, body language, and what they may be experiencing in the moment so that you can be more helpful to your child in terms of mirroring that back to them. Your child is really struggling to learn more about him or herself because they have a social and communication disability that's harder for them. So this is where it starts. Zuzana, did you want to?
Notice that you said you will see, you'll also feel in yourself. Your child might make you feel a certain way as a way of communication, especially when they're nonverbal. Sometimes we can feel anger or rage, and it might be actually their anger or rage they're trying to communicate, so they make us feel. And this is how children communicate, babies communicate before they can speak. So also, if you are able to, some people are very well connected to their feelings and sensations in their body. So it's another way of noticing what your child might be feeling.
Excellent. So the message again is trust your own ability to observe and understand your child, as well as your own internal reaction and response to your child. Okay, that's not so easy to do. I don't know about all of you. I am still learning how to do that, for example, in some of my interactions with my own family members. Sometimes no one pushes my buttons. I always like to bring my beautiful sister up as an example, but my sister and I know how to push each other's buttons better than anyone else. And sometimes my sister will do something or say something, and I will notice that I can get extremely heated. Like when I say heated, meaning that there's warm sensations bubbling up in my body because I'm getting angry or frustrated in response to my sister. And of course, I have learned how to take a breath and pause and then communicate something more effectively to my sister than just to yell or to express more frustration towards her. But this happens for all of us in all of our everyday relationships. So I think it's, again, really important to understand that this is not always so easy, and we're all still working on these aspects of our own development, right? So in many ways, this is a very powerful learning opportunity for you as parents to learn both about yourselves and your child in ways that you don't get a lot of encouragement to. So I think we already touched on this, Zuzana, yeah, that, helping your child understand. And
also,
again,
7,
please.
So I'm just wondering, yes, I think we've touched on what's in this PowerPoint.
Excellent. Okay, beautiful. Yeah, so I think everything else on the PowerPoint we've actually already touched on in our discussion. Yes?
Well, the middle point, it goes to well, let's say, directs us to another strategy, and you described it very well in our preparation. You spoke about those moments of connection and create those little, it doesn't have to be 5 minutes or half an hour. It can be really a moment where we notice that we are connected through something we both enjoy. And it's in the second paragraph. It says, employ lots of physical activities to support a pleasant sense of being in a body and to help your own or their own self-regulation. I think this is such an important point. I mean, again, we can spend a year just talking about this moment of connection through something mutually pleasant, because this is something that supports the love for being with another.
Absolutely. Just to emphasize that too, that how important it is for a child's emotional development to have these moments where they're experiencing and sharing joy with another person. That sometimes, because our kids are younger and their bodies are developing, they need a lot of movement, and they're also learning a lot about the world through actions and sensations, not as much by analyzing everything and thinking about everything. So connecting with your child physically, especially in activities, games where your child is smiling and giggling and experiencing joy. If you are able to have a moment where your child looks up at you and smiles, and you have one of these amazing connection moments with your child, do more of what you just did to give your child that experience. And don't underestimate the power of those moments where your child is looking up at you and smiling and giggling, and you're connecting with each other. That's a very, very powerful moment of social and emotional development for your child. So even if that happens for a few minutes every day when you come home from work and you just are tickling your child, or you're singing a song together and your child's looking at you and smiling and giggling, do more of that and really, really recognize the power of that for your child's longer term emotional development. Our kids have fewer, because social interaction is so challenging for them, they tend to have fewer and fewer of those moments where they're experiencing the joy and the pleasantness of being able to share something with another person. And the more they have that experience, it's like a snowball effect and ripples out onto the sense that we really want to give them, that I'm a good person, I'm fun, people enjoy interacting with me, and we want that to strengthen for all of our kids on the spectrum. Okay, should we video or questions? What do you think?
The video is about the ripple effect of a good moment or good feeling shared with another, but it's already 12 minutes to 7.
I say we save the video for another time, and what we're gonna
watch it in that time.
What's that?
Or people can watch it in their time. You know, it's
yes, exactly. You have the PowerPoint you can get on the Transforming Autism website, and so you can see the link to the YouTube video, which is a very powerful example of how an emotional experience that one person is in the middle of can then ripple out and be shared by people very quickly. We're wired as human beings to have this kind of experience, that when someone else is feeling a certain emotion, we react and respond to that emotionally ourselves, and then sometimes can share that experience. And it's a very, very powerful aspect of our development that's illustrated really well in the video. Okay, so let's go to, let's see, shall I continue sharing my screen, or what would be the best thing to do, I think, visually for everybody for this section? I don't know, what can you see on your end, Zuzana? On my screen, can you see the picture?
Have a great meeting.
Have a great meeting. We don't want to say have a great meeting. That's unnecessary. Let's say
maybe that's what I've got as well.
You could put the first page of the PowerPoint.
Let's go back to that. Very good. So now we have both. Okay, excellent. So what we'd like to do at this point is invite those of you that have questions, concerns, about your particular child to have an opportunity to ask those, share those with us. So if you're going to do that, please turn your microphone on, and then go ahead and ask us your question. Share with us. Would anyone like to go ahead and ask a question? It's okay. Zuzana and I have also learned a lot over the years about being very comfortable with silence and allowing space for oftentimes our children to be able to initiate a social interaction, which can sometimes be difficult and take time. So Zuzana and I can wait very patiently as all of you are maybe forming questions or thoughts that you'd like to share with us. And drink water. And Zuzana and I are also prepared for you to not share your questions with us, in which case we will go to some very specific examples that we have from our own life with individuals on the spectrum and families.
I wonder if Victoria wanted to say anything because her microphone's on. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Perhaps not. That's okay. So one of the things that we would certainly like to share are some the example, Zuzana, that we talked about that you shared last week was so powerful, and I think very typical, common for so many families in terms of where this can be very challenging to support the child's emotional development in everyday interactions. Do you know the example that I'm talking about, that I'm referring to?
I'm just trying to think about it in a relation how we developed the discussion or the talk tonight. I've worked with one child who was 3.5 years old when I met him, and when I was invited to join the family for our work, I've noticed that his mom worked really hard on being able to teach him, to be there, to connect, to give him something, to make him play, to encourage him to play, perhaps I should say. She worked really hard, and I witnessed how that was all she did all day. But it was really very rarely did he connect with his mom, and she almost didn't see him responding to her. And once she was cutting vegetables and he was sitting on a worktop in the kitchen, and she sang a song she made. She made up for him, and she sang it, and he was looking away out of the window, smiling with his biggest grin. And she was singing and singing, and she didn't see him respond, and she gave up, and she was cooking and mixing something in a pot. And after a few minutes, or no minutes, after a few seconds of silence, the boy looked at her and gave her a big grin, but she couldn't see it. And this is an example of how the children have different pace. They process everything differently. So I just would like to invite everyone to remember that the pace we have and the pace with which we process is very different from the children with autism. So we really need to slow down and give children the time to respond to us. And it's very difficult because we are different. Our brains work differently. So sometimes we had a slide, Andrew, we didn't read, we skipped it. But on that slide, there was you in capitals lots of times. And we wanted to tell parents that they are so important for their children. And the most important, not as important as professionals or therapists, the emotional bond you can form with your child is like anything else in the whole world. And these little moments of connection will not only fuel the child, but you as well, and encourage you for other play that's connecting. So I was there as a therapist to help the mom see that moment, because she didn't feel the boy took the song in. She didn't know that he loved the song so much. But I was there with my camera and I was able to show her. So this is something what therapists can perhaps help you with, to help you see how much your child loves the moments that you give them with patience and love and joy. They feel it. They just might not be able to respond in the same kind of moment or in the same way that's readable to you both in that moment. So that was one of the examples. And I helped the mom realize what happened, and then we worked on how to help the two meet for 1 second, then 2 seconds, then 5 minutes, until the boy developed and the connection strengthened and deepened.
Yes, that's such a powerful example, Zuzana. And I think this happens all the time for parents and families, because you have so many demands on you, so much pressure to just get through everyday life and manage your lives and your families. And many of you have other children that you're also trying to support and to raise. And so you don't have the luxury as we do as professionals of just focusing all of your attention on your child on the spectrum, and staying really focused and really present with your child. And I think sometimes with good intentions, professionals have given you the sort of the impossible, the impossible standard of having to focus your attention on your child in a way that sets you up to feel like it's impossible. There's no way you can do it. And so what I really try to do in all of my work with families is really try to help families pay attention to the moments of everyday life, the activities, the routines, where there's already opportunities for interaction and communication with your kids, not to create something separate, but for example, if you're giving your child a bath every night, is there a way that during bath time for 3 minutes or 5 minutes, you can just spend more time tuning into what your child is enjoying or experiencing about bath time? Of course, sometimes bath time is not always enjoyable for children on the spectrum that have sensory sensitivities, and bath time can be stressful. But for some children, it's incredibly, it can be moments where it's incredibly joyful and pleasurable. So really slow those moments down and take advantage of those moments as social and emotional learning opportunities for your children by tuning into what they're experiencing, as we've said, naming it, putting words to it, and actually sharing it with your child.
Mm-hmm.
And that often can happen as I said, in bath time, when you're eating with your children, and sort of everyday routines. And I think you as families have many of them that professionals haven't necessarily helped you recognize are really meaningful and important moments of connection with your child.
Andrew, we've been talking about the beautiful sunny moments and how to encourage those, because they will help us in the stormy weather. And we had one question that addresses the stormy weather.
Great.
Literally stormy because it's very fiery. So the child feels very angry often. I read it. I try to bring the water to put off the fire by naming the feeling, calming him down, and so on. But oftentimes he would only calm down when I raise my voice and be very firm about what I'm saying. I feel like I'm almost shouting, but I also feel that I have to meet his energy with a bit of loud and firm energy. My calm voice gets taken for granted. How do I get him to notice my calm? How do I break this pattern? Thank you for the question.
So that's a fantastic question, and there are so many sort of follow-up questions that I would have to give us a clearer picture of what might be happening in those moments where it sounds like your child's getting very perhaps overwhelmed, frustrated. I'm not sure what sort of what leads up to that. So my first question would be, um, when is your child more calm? When are the moments and the times during the day where he's not in what seems like that really tense, escalated, agitated state that then where you then have to either yell at him or talk very loudly to kind of grab his attention and get him to do what you are asking him to do, it sounds like. So sometimes what I have learned about many children over the years is that sometimes when our children are in those heightened states of emotional overload, they're experiencing strong emotions in their own bodies. It's a very strong and intense sensory experience to have your heart racing and sweat coming, and right there's a lot happening in a child's body that can be very overwhelming. So sometimes those moments may not always be the best moments to facilitate what we're talking about today, to have more of a connection, because your child can't take in information very well during the time when they're super escalated or agitated. Now, recognizing that they're upset or angry is very important. And so I think that's a very important piece of the puzzle, that you're actually letting your child know that you recognize that they're overwhelmed, upset, frustrated, whatever it might be. But that also may not immediately calm your child down, right? So, Zuzana, I'm aware that the construction sounds are getting louder.
No, it's okay.
You
It's okay.
can hear me okay? So I'm just going to shift to you and see if there's anything you wanted to add to that question, response to that question about this very important stormy emotional state that your child's in the middle of sometimes. It sounds like a lot.
Like you said, there is so much we can think about. When we get a question like this, there is so much to think. Like, where does your child, what level of functioning is he at normally, or is he verbal? Is he non-verbal? Does he go from 0 to 100 in his anger, or are there any in between where you can perhaps be a bit more calm or quieter and recognize and acknowledge his anger? So there are lots of things we could think about when I think about what you wrote, your question. Um, uh,
Can I add something to that, which what you're saying, Susanna? I think it's important to recognize also sometimes that you're also doing some things which I think I want to give you a lot of credit for, which is that you're trying to respond to your child in a way that really helps them calm down. Now, for some children, when we raise our voices, and we give them a firm limit and boundary, sometimes that actually does have the effect of calming your child down, because perhaps your child was feeling very stressed or very insecure or very frightened by something, or anxious, overwhelmed. So having your firm voice can sometimes be very, very calming and reassuring for a child. So I think that's important for you to recognize that you're actually doing the important work, which is really trying to understand what is it that I'm doing that actually helps my child calm down from that sounds like that really escalated stage or phase. What we have to be careful about, though, is that sometimes when we raise our voices or when we yell at or do other things in response to our child's behavior because partly we're frustrated, sometimes our children will seem to calm down or slow down, but sometimes they may do that because they're really, really scared. And so I've had to learn as a professional a lot over the years what that line is between setting a firm limit and a clear limit and giving a child information, and when I myself am frustrated with a child and may yell or do something that's really stern or strict or clear that seems to calm the child down, but what I'm actually doing is I'm giving the child the message that they're doing something that I don't approve of, and that's sort of in a way they're bad for experiencing the emotion and they're bad for doing something. And so then the child, what happens is actually the child's trust in me decreases in that moment. When I set a firm limit, like I described earlier, a child can actually feel more secure and more safe because I've made the environment more safe for them. But if I'm yelling and coming from a place of my own frustration, oftentimes, even though it looks like it's calming a child down, what it's actually doing is creating for the child a more fearful experience. And then that child sort of will go off away from me and in some way sort of try to calm down on their own. And that's not necessarily helpful for longer term emotional development, because we want our kids to learn that they can lean into us and trust us to assist them to calm down, not because they're scared, but because we're available to them. Does that make sense? So I think that's an important distinction to make, and I encourage you to keep really finding out what is going on for my child in this moment. That's the first question I would ask is, what do you think, from what your observations are of your child, what do you think is triggering or causing your child to become so escalated or frustrated about this particular situation?
And whilst you were talking, Anjana added some of her thoughts and reflections, and she actually did describe that her child probably has been mirroring and imitating what he saw. The pattern was between her and her husband. And she's saying, I'm trying to break the pattern, have been working on myself and our relationship, but this is the work, this is the development. When you slow down, you reflect and you adjust. And this is what Andrew spoke about in the very beginning. We are learning, and by noticing, this is the work, and it'll take time. And yes, children do mirror, and children with autism are very very honest, and no censorship mirrors, they show us. So I would say you're in a very good way of helping your child by looking into what's been happening, and I would say you are doing the work. And I just want to encourage you to be very self-compassionate and patient, and you're learning like everyone else is learning. It's been hard, it'll be hard, and it'll probably take time as well, and lots of repetitions, and for your child to see how you do it differently, and perhaps he might need more talking about what's been happening and reflecting.
And I would also say, oh, how sweet. Someone's getting flowers. Oh, that's so lovely. I just want to add to that you know, we have a tremendous resource with transforming the Transforming Autism Project website. Our founder Guy Shahar has really written some extremely helpful and powerful articles that really connect with this idea of how to support your child's emotional development, in part by really addressing your own. You know, and I think it's incredibly powerful that Guy has been so transparent about his own journey as a dad to try to understand his own emotional reactions and responses to his son, and then actually was fortunate to learn to have an opportunity to learn some tools through meditation practice and other things to really try to really address his own sort of ability to be calm himself, so that he could be more available for his son. And it's incredibly, there's a lot of wisdom on the Transforming Autism Project website that I encourage all of you parents that are listening to read, as well as Guy's book, which is extremely powerful, coming from a dad who's kind of lived the experience and is living the experience with his own son.
One quick question.
Yes.
If my child's at school, right, and he uses the what they call the things that actually calm them down, the signs, do we carry on using them actually at home, or do we just try and do the other things at home with them, support them?
Excellent question. My first thought is, if they're working at school, and when you say signs, do you mean like a card, or like a sign, like sign language, or is it
no,
like a
just sort of pictures, like sort of like their emotions. You know what I mean?
yes,
Or their emotions, a bit like the PEC system, but just sort of like emotions. Do we
yes.
carry on using them?
Well, yeah, that's my first question would be, are they working?
Yes, they are working for them at school, but
Okay.
when we've tried them, they don't work. You see, so I'm trying to find out.
And I've seen that this happens. It's very common and can be very confusing for families. Oftentimes, our children with autism can be really good, what we would call situation-specific learners, so they can learn to do something or use a certain strategy in a very specific environment. So like in the school environment with a certain aide or teacher that's working with them, sometimes they can learn to use something or do something. But then at home, because the whole environment is different, and it's you as family, and it's not the school staff, sometimes our children are not using a strategy that they seem to be able to use so easily in one environment. So I would focus really on, rather than feeling like you guys have to do it exactly the way the school is doing it, and sometimes that works really well and can be incredibly helpful for families. I would ask if there's anything that you do at home that works, that's not using the cards, and that would be my first question. If there's anything else that you do that occasionally works with your child to sort of calm him down in situations where he's stressed or overwhelmed.
Answer to that question is no, because I have to keep showing him the card, and then
Okay.
he's realised that I'm talking about calm, that I want him to calm down, to have the conversation.
Excellent. So I would add one piece to that, and I would experiment with this. Rather than saying, I want you to calm down, let's calm down, I would actually use the card. Like, it's okay to show the card when he's stressed, but what I would do is actually think about it more as you're showing him what to do. Rather than expecting or asking him to be calm, you're showing him, Mommy's going to calm down. I'm going to take a breath. I'm going to calm myself down. Mommy's calming down. So you're actually showing him, this is how you calm yourself down. Because I don't know if he's able yet to do that himself on his own. And so part of what can happen too is when you're asking him to calm himself down, and he's struggling and he's stressed, he almost needs this additional extra support, right? Of other people and mommy showing me how to calm myself down. And
How would I actually show him?
So you just like I described. So if he's stressed, and you take out the card and you say, Mommy's gonna calm down. Mommy's gonna calm down slowly. So that's all you're doing, is you're actually using words to say, Mommy's calming down. I would actually really like sit yourself down in a chair or on the floor or in one place. I would find out from the school if there's other things that they might do when they present the card to him that may also help him calm down. So for example, the school staff might give him a hug, or they may squeeze his arm or do other things that really help him calm his body down. And so I would really encourage you to make it, again, you're almost creating an opportunity for him to learn how to calm down together with you versus expecting him like on his own to calm himself down. Is that any clearer?
Yep.
And I would not expect that this would happen immediately. Can be a process that takes some kids, honestly, many years to be able to. I don't know about you, but I sometimes have a hard time calming myself down still as an adult. So I have to learn strategies to calm myself down, and I obviously have many of them. But I think sometimes this is when we're talking about emotional learning, a huge part of this is really walking our kids through the process of this is how people calm themselves down. And you as an adult mom are doing that all the time. You have your own way when you get stressed of trying to calm yourself down. And I think some of that is actually sharing that or showing that or doing that together with your son, because he's struggling to figure out how to do that for himself. So he almost needs you to break that down a little more clearly for him. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I also wonder if you can use the cards to just help him reflect on his feeling. So before you show him where you want him to be, just show him, you are really cross with me now. So use the cards. I don't know, Andrew, what your experience is, but I often see that when I reflect the kids, the feeling to a child, they all immediately feel more connected with me because they feel felt, they feel understood, and they are more willing to sort of listen or kind of what's next then. I am angry, I am upset, but I can see you're really cross with me now. Maybe I say, why? Oh, you're cross. I can see, look, you really wanted something. And that immediately might help to calm down. And then the strategy Andrew described, by me staying calm down, feeling my ground, I immediately help the child feel that calmness and evoke it in him. That's something I would try.
Right.
Perhaps it sounds, Victoria, like it sounded almost like you would like the cards to work at home. And I wonder if you have working relationship with the school where you could discuss how they do it, what they do with them, and if they could give you tips on how to use them.
I think that sometimes that's happened, but he still doesn't like. I think because he's at home and it's a different environment.
Yes.
He's finding it hard to concentrate on what I want.
Yes.
Because it's not the same environment in the school.
Yes.
Because you get the one-to-one attention in the school, and then because I've got others as well, I can't always give him the attention.
And also, I think everybody knows that feeling of the feelings we experience with our closest are the most intense.
Yeah.
So let go more, don't we? We kind of feel free to be more authentic. So they might be part of it as well. And it's, yes, parents, I guess we get to hold our child's feelings, the rawest feelings. They might contain themselves better at school, but at home they just let go. So they might be part of why it works better at school, but he brings you the whole palette at home.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that the most important thing, Victoria, for you to do is to try some different things and experiment and really see what works. If there's a moment of calm that you're able to to bring forth with him successfully in the moment. It sounds like the way that you're currently doing it, which is like by showing him the card and say you need to calm down, is having the opposite effect than you want it to. So that's why I would say, let's actually, if you try to even maybe just hold the card up and then put it down, or doing something differently than you're currently doing it. And that's why I always go back to to saying, oh, you're really mad right now. Like Zuzana said, you're really mad right now. Let's try to calm down together. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to take a few breaths. I'm going to sing myself a song. Whatever it is that may actually help him calm down, you do that yourself, and you do that sort of together with him. And if you start, if you try singing a song very quietly that he says no, doesn't want the song, then you're learning, okay, this is not going to help him. Maybe if you just sit down on the floor and you hold up the card and you stretch your arms out and you say hug, maybe he's going to want to come and get a hug from you, and that will calm him down quickly. Or maybe it's you know, having a certain toy or object that he's able to hold on to and look at. Maybe that's what will sort of calm his system down in that moment. So this is part of the really hard work for families. Is there's no set strategy that's going to work for him necessarily, or any child. But I appreciate you bringing the question to us, and the school is onto something that works. But the bottom line is, you're not a teacher, and you're not in school, so you have to come up with a strategy that is your own and that's going to work for you at home, because you're not able to do it exactly the way that the school does. So definitely learn as much as you can from them about what's working, and then use it in a way that's possible for you at home. And of course, with the emphasis always on being trying to be as calm yourself as you can be when your son is in the middle of his storm. Sort of like being your challenge is to be the anchor in his storm, because he's already it sounds like a mess when he's in that state. Thank you, Victoria, very much for being brave and asking your question.
Andrew, it's already 20 minutes past 7.
20 minutes past, so we have to unfortunately end for today, everyone. So thank you all. We want to acknowledge and appreciate all of you for joining us today on our webinar. Hopefully you've gotten some information and perhaps a few ideas and strategies that you can try out and use with your children in everyday life. Trust yourselves and your intuition as parents, even though you've tried and things haven't gone as you hoped sometimes. Never stop trusting your intuition and your instincts and your abilities as parents. When you stop trusting that and only rely on professionals to tell you what to do, I guarantee everyday family life will get much harder. So I really want to encourage you as parents to trust that you have a lot of wisdom and understanding of your children, even if sometimes you're hitting difficult periods with your kids. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep trying.
And keep being gentle on yourself. We are all learning.